Every now and then, someone with a strange genetic or morphological anomaly will pop up and have their 15 minutes of fame in the media, where people get to see them give an interview and talk about the strange trait that has garnered the media's attention and how it affects their life. One such person has very recently made an appearance on BBC Breakfast, a light-hearted morning news show in the UK. This guest was a 71-year-old woman from Scotland named Jo Cameron, who has a unique collection of traits that, on paper, sound like the makings of a superhero of some kind. She doesn't feel pain, as she said that sometimes if she's getting burned, she'll smell it before actually feeling any of the pain from the burn. And she heals from these injuries really quickly, with little to no residual scar tissue. And when she's in a scary or extremely stressful situation, she doesn't feel any anxiety, she doesn't feel any fear. It sounds pretty wild, but it might not be all that you think it is. Jo Cameron's condition was first noticed by the doctors who did her hip replacement. She went in for a hip problem, like an odd lack of mobility, and she was diagnosed with extreme arthritis. If she could feel pain, she would have been in agony all of the time because the arthritis was that advanced. But as it was, she just complained of mild mobility impairment. She just couldn't move her hip that much. Miss Cameron got a hip replacement, and afterwards, she had no complaints about any pain. She didn't even really use the pain pills that they gave her because she didn't need them. She said she felt fine. After a second surgery, which, much like the first, should have been followed by a painful recovery, was instead painless. And when this happened, when her second surgery, she said again, yep, no pain, don't need pain meds. Her doctors decided that they really need to look into this, because this is weird. No one comes out of a hip replacement surgery and a recovery surgery and both times says, yep, doesn't hurt, don't need the pain pills. Like, that's weird. So they went to look into it. And as a result of their investigation, a case study documenting Mrs. Cameron's traits and her DNA has recently been published in the British Journal of Anesthesia. Miss Cameron was found to have an extensive but strange medical history. The authors of the paper said, quote, "She reported numerous burns and cuts without pain, often smelling her burning flesh before noticing any injury, and these wounds healed quickly, with little or no residual scar," unquote. That's pretty wild. But they also looked at her diet, and they found that she could eat incredibly, painfully hot chili peppers, quote, "without any discomfort, but a short-lasting, pleasant glow in her mouth," unquote. Miss Cameron even described how giving birth, she's a mother, and she said that giving birth was a painless, even pleasant experience. With respect to anxiety, depression, panic, and fear, Miss Cameron said that she doesn't feel any of it. She recently had a car accident where she bumped her head, but she healed from that pretty quickly and said that she didn't feel fear or panic during the car crash at all. She seems to be immune to fear, as odd as that sounds. This strange perpetual calmness is also paired with chronic forgetfulness and absent-mindedness, which have been described as endearing qualities by Mrs. Cameron's friends. Her genetic study revealed two significant mutations. One of these mutations was to the FAAH gene, or the FA gene, which expresses fatty acid amide hydrolase. The fact that her FAAH gene was disabled meant that the enzyme it produces could no longer break down the target compounds. And those compounds, like anandamide and palmitoyl-ethanolamide, were present in her blood at really high levels. And that makes sense, because they would be present at these high levels because she couldn't express the enzyme that broke those compounds down. Unsurprisingly, this FAAH gene is involved in pain, as well as memory and mood. The gene works in the endocannabinoid system, which is the same system that cannabis compounds like THC and CBD work in. Now, the other mutated gene that she had, was thought to be part of the so-called junk DNA, and we learn every day that this term junk DNA is nonsensical, because this DNA isn't junk. A lot of it is just stuff that we haven't identified its use for or its purpose yet. So it's not junk DNA, it's kind of a bad name, but it is what it is. So anyway, this mutated gene that was in her so-called junk DNA instead seemed to work as a switch that turns on or off the FAAH gene. Now in most people, the FAAH gene is not only unmutated, it's healthy, it's viable, but it's also turned on. This other regulatory gene has it turned on, so it's actively being expressed. But in Mrs. Cameron, this regulatory gene is turned off. So she has this impaired FAAH enzyme. And that, in combination with the heavy suppression of its expression because of this second gene that has turned it off, means that her body has virtually zero functional circulating FAAH enzymes. This modification is believed to play some kind of role in downregulating her perception of pain, but the deeper details and the mechanism of how this works precisely are still unknown. It's not understood yet. Researchers will need to take DNA samples from Mrs. Cameron and do more research. The authors of the paper predict that her DNA could lead to a gene therapy that temporarily turns off the pain sensation and/or improves wound healing, which could be a more effective way than painkillers to treat pain while recovering from a surgery, a traumatic injury, or while dealing with a chronic condition. So imagine, instead of pain pills, you have some kind of injections, and it'll take all of the cells there and alter their genomes in some way to turn off the expression of this FAAH gene. And the idea, ideally, is that this could someday be some kind of viable, functional pain treatment that wouldn't involve downing a dozen potentially dangerous pain pills, with all of their unpleasant side effects and potentially dangerous risks. Mrs. Cameron herself seems to be, more than anything, curious and good-natured about her condition. She said that she never realized that she was different from other people, and never thought that there was anything unusual about the level of pain she felt. Personally, I find this a little odd. Her account of this is somewhat strange, because she appears to feel no pain at all, and yet, when everyone around her cuts themselves, or burns themselves, or stubs their toe, or gets in a car accident and hits their head, they feel scared. They feel pain right away, and they don't have to wait to smell the burning flesh, or incidentally notice a huge gash in their arm, or a bone poking out of their toe. Everyone around her is feeling all of this pain for all of these various reasons, and I think it's strange that she never seemed to notice that she doesn't have the same reactions as other people. If somebody burns themselves, getting burned hurts. They'd pull their arm back or whatever limb it was, and they'd be like, "Ow, that hurt, man!" And they might cry. But she gets burned, and she says that she feels no pain at all, and she only notices when she smells her burning flesh. And I mean, if that was me, I would clearly see, wow, this is weird. Why don't I feel pain when everybody else who this happens to seems to scream and cry? Maybe there's something going on here. But I guess she just never noticed and just never bothered paying that much attention to it. Little odd, but whatever. In a more general perspective, pain is a very important sensation. So not being able to sense pain can actually be really risky. You could injure yourself and not realize it and continue to live your life and compound the injury and make it worse. But Miss Cameron seems to have benefited massively by also having an improved rate of wound healing, with less scar tissue, which is equally fascinating and holds just as much medical potential. Mrs. Cameron said that she would, quote, "be elated if any research into my own genetics could help other people who are suffering," unquote. She sounds like quite the lady.